Okay, so what is a climate cafe? A climate cafe is a warm, hospitable, safe place where people can get together in small groups to talk about their thoughts and feelings about climate change and climate breakdown, I should say now. And it's a cafe style meeting. So people sit around a table. It's accompanied by hot drinks and cake. Cake is very important. And the thing that makes it safe is that it's confidential and it's an action-free zone. So it's a place where you can go to engage in the topic of, this very huge topic of climate breakdown without feeling you have to defend yourself or argue a particular position or get involved in political action. So political action is brilliant, but climate cafes are very specifically a place where feelings and thoughts are explored and shared rather than ideas or theories or activities that people want to take. Very often the cafes, because of the intimate and safe and confidential nature of them, they can create very strong links between the participants, and that's an additional value of them. And I found that this is true even of the work that's done on Zoom as well as the work that's done face-to-face. The cafes are facilitated by two experienced people. Now, these people don't have to be psychotherapists, although the people present here are all psychotherapists or have psychotherapy training. But you need to be psychologically minded, and I'll talk a little bit later about the steps that people can take if they want to get involved more deeply in helping to facilitate and run climate cafes. So why were they developed? Climate issues, well, I mean, when I first started, climate issues were in some of the media. There was still a great deal of denial and silence around on the topic of climate breakdown. It's much more in the news now, and so it's arousing, I think, a much higher degree of concern and anxiety. And it arouses very strong feelings, and it can also be extremely divisive. It's a difficult issue, and it can be hard to talk about it with people without it becoming unsafe, without it arousing various defenses. If people feel judged, or if they feel criticized, or they feel that they're not doing enough, they can become defensive, they can become angry. And it can feel an unsafe conversation to have. And I've experienced that myself among people who are intimate friends or members of my family who I'm very close to, but where it feels that I can be treading on eggshells by beginning to touch on that particular topic. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is because people don't want to make the changes and sustain what they see as the losses involved in making adaptations or changes to their lifestyle, to the things that they want to consume, the flights they want to take, the cars they want to drive, the food they want to eat, and so on. So it can be very challenging, not only to your sense of identity, but to your sense of how you live your life and whether you're living a good life or not. Climate denial is very much less common now than it has been in the past. But working on Zoom and working with an international group of people, it was quite moving and frightening, actually, to listen to people, some people from the American Midwest, a woman from Russia, and other people, where to talk about climate change makes you an outcast. People had described being avoided, being abused, being shouted at, people crossing the street in order not to kind of go past them in the street. And the relief that people felt being in a group, albeit on screen, where they didn't have to feel that they had to hide their feelings or put up with that level of ostracization and abuse was palpable. People broke down in tears, and they were tears of relief as well as tears of grief. What is very common is what's called disavowal, where people will say, oh, I agree climate change is dreadful. I do everything I can to help, and I'm flying off to New York next week for a weekend because it's my wedding anniversary. And people are able to hold those two things in their minds without the kind of cognitive dissonance, without the discomfort that comes with that if you actually really openly and truly face the implications of what you're saying. And that's, in my experience, that's where it becomes difficult in the people that I meet and the people I talk to. Because you're dealing with something which is where two things are happening at once. And it's a problematic area. And the minute you touch on that, I mean, people might call it hypocrisy, but disavowal is a much better word. The minute you touch on those double standards, people's defenses go up, and it's difficult then to take a conversation further. So in a climate cafe, the facilitators are working to try to enable people to explore their feelings and get deeper and deeper into their feelings without those barriers going up. And that's the particular value of this model. So it's a space where you're free from pressure to justify, to argue, to defend, and you can share and explore. So how does it work? It works when 10 people get together, either through the publicity, advertising it in places, local community centres, or through green newsletters, or more likely if somebody organises a group and then asks facilitators to come and facilitate the cafe. It lasts for an hour and a half. There are 2 facilitators working on it, and that's quite important because you're having to pay attention to some very complex group processes. And also there are some occasions when one person in the group might want to go off on their own. They might become overwhelmed, and then one facilitator can go and do a bit of one-to-one work, and while the other facilitator holds the space. It can be one-off, or it can be a series, depending on what the group wants and what the venue is. And the model can be adapted to suit the interests or needs of the group. There is a particular format which we are trained to work to by the Climate Psychology Alliance, but it can be adapted. And we being myself and Joanna Smith, who's here tonight, hi Joanna, did some what I found was very exciting work at the Atkinson Gallery recently in Southport. And I'd like to invite Jo to talk about that, if that's okay, Jo. Yeah.
Yeah, we were invited to support a drama group who the head of the group has a real genuine concern for the climate change, climate breakdown, and wanted to set up a group to do some work around that, a young group. So I think their age is about 18 to 24, or even, 18 to 20. They are young. And there was a particular project that they were working on. We were invited along to offer a climate cafe, none of whom had attended anything like it before, so they didn't really know what to expect. And I think they found it immensely eye-opening. and beneficial. But for the project, this drama project, they then were invited to go away and reflect on what had come up for them. And we, Dinah and I, needed to respond to what came up, to plan a second follow-up session to see what would be of value to support them in their explorations. So we devised a follow-up. I do a lot of art therapy work, and some of the personal work I've been doing has involved guided visualizations, and we decided that alongside some artwork to support it would be a useful vehicle to offer this group as a second project. And it was very exciting, as Dinah said, and it was really important that there were two of us there to hold the space, as one did need to have some time out, because it can be immensely powerful. The whole process, the climate cafe and this follow-up with a guided visualization. I won't share too much, but in a nutshell, the visualization was taking the group on their own journey in nature, in their mind's eye, and it was an opportunity to see what came up for them in response. It was about a 10-minute, and then they were invited to create some artwork as a response. And then in summary, all of that was then going to be used in not a performance piece, but in a videoed, documented piece of drama. They were going to go out themselves then into nature, and using the experiences of the last sessions they had with us, to go into nature and respond outside and video it and document it. It was really interesting, really exciting, what they were doing. And we haven't seen the final product yet, so but I'm sure we'll be invited along to the opening, so we can accommodate different needs. We can offer a series of however many workshops, depending on what the group wants, really. But I think it was a really enjoyable experience, and it was an interesting development from the actual climate cafe itself.
Mm.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jo. Thank you. When the film is made, it will be shown at the Atkinson Gallery in Southport, but there's every chance it will come to Liverpool, to Open Eye, and I will make every effort to make sure that there is a place that it can be shown here. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was how to participate, and the important thing, if you do want to take part and possibly think about training to help facilitate cafes, is to join the online cafes which are run by Climate Psychology Alliance. I worked for those on a voluntary basis all the way through COVID, and that was a brilliant thing for me because it brought together my two great interests. One is psychotherapy and the other is climate work. And it was totally absorbing. I met some absolutely wonderful people all over the UK who are doing facilitation. There are lots of spin-off activities on that site. If you become a member of CPA, £25 a year, there are all sorts of psychotherapeutic and creative group activities that happen online. So there's much more going on in that organisation, as well as the putting on climate cafes. But as I've alluded to, working with people across the globe was just phenomenal, because it gave me a real insight into what it's like worldwide. I listened to a woman describe how she lived in one state and couldn't visit her daughter a few states away because the wildfires were in the way, so there was no way to get through. And hearing it from somebody who was talking about it with the associated grief and anger that came with that story really brought it home to me. hearing from people in Africa about the impact on sub-Saharan Africa. The woman in Russia who was apologetic asked permission to be in the group because of the activities of Putin in Ukraine. Again, a very moving moment when that person made that statement. And people from Europe, Scandinavia, all over the place. So that was just a most extraordinary experience for me. I then went on to become a trainer and did quite a lot of work with the training group and helping them to shape up all sorts of professional and ethical aspects of that work. So a powerful group of people, and as I say, even though it was happening on Zoom, I feel a great connection with the people that I worked with over the COVID years, the lockdown years. We do have a Northwest group, and although I haven't checked this with Nick, I didn't know you were going to be here, Nick, but I wonder if you would be willing to talk about the Northwest group because you set that up. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine, Dinah.
Thank you.
So very briefly, the Climate Psychology Alliance has been going for quite a few years, and certainly I joined before COVID and had the benefit of meeting people in the real world. And then over that period of time of COVID and sort of more generally over the last few years, the membership has grown. So there's now a lot more members of the Climate Psychology Alliance, and it felt that there was now enough people in the Northwest area to sort of make it worthwhile having a little virtual group of ourselves, so that we could share insights into what we were doing. And I think the other key thing here is that, as Dinah has mentioned, is it's really important to have two people facilitating these cafes. So being able to connect with other facilitators and say, I'd like to do a cafe in, I don't know, this location on this date. Does that sound like something that anybody might be available to co-facilitate? That was sort of really the impetus behind it. But also, I think there's just other things, as Dinah has mentioned, that the Climate Psychology Alliance are doing, and other sort of areas of interest that the members have got. So just sort of being able to connect around some of those with like-minded people in the area has felt quite positive. It's quite a new initiative, so we haven't actually got around to meeting yet. But that's the plan for the new year, is to start to connect a little bit more. I think that's probably enough on that sort of Northwest bit, isn't it, Dinah?
Okay, thanks very much, Nick. So are there any questions that people have or comments that people want to make? Hi, hello, Madeline.
Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know you said it lasts an hour and a half. So my question is, what are you doing during that hour and a half?
During the hour and a half, we begin with a structured exercise, which is based on holding natural objects, which are provided by the facilitators, and making that hand-heart connection, which enables people to just feel and look inward and get in touch with their feelings about climate breakdown. And we found natural objects are good ways of doing this, because most people are affected by what's happening to the natural world. And it's also easy to find beautiful natural objects, stones, lichen-covered twigs, shells, and so forth, which give people associations, very often associations that go back to their childhood and earlier times. So that's a guided exercise which enables people to get very quickly into some fairly strong feelings, which they are able to share or not share as they wish. And that's then followed by people looking at the connections that are created in the group. And that's also important because it helps to create a network within the group of people who are like-minded, who have similar feelings, who have similar experiences, similar difficulties. And that can then extend the work, and it extends the work group-wide as opposed to an individual extending that work themselves. And that can be quite a moving experience for the facilitator to observe. And then there's another bit of sharing and an ending to help people to close. So that's the format of the hour and a half.